and welcome to the Riyal Deal, coming to you from the Al Arabiya English headquarters. This is your weekly bulletin, bringing you all the latest business news headlines and analysis from Saudi Arabia. Coming up, the US President Donald Trump visits Saudi Arabia, mixing diplomacy with some significant business deals. Coming up, we assess their value and their importance. The President and CEO of the US Saudi Business Council tells us how President Trump's historic Saudi visit translates into business for American and Saudi enterprises. And AI in focus after Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman launches a global artificial intelligence company, HUMAIN, which is backed by the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Hello and welcome. We begin with an in-depth look at the visit to Saudi Arabia by the US President Donald Trump. Well, this visit was the first major foreign trip since he took office in January. In addition to discussing a host of geopolitical issues, economics and defense partnerships were very much under focus during the talks between President Trump and the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Well, during this visit, the US received a commitment from the kingdom to invest $600 billion in a series of deals, which include nearly $142 billion in defense sales. Well, this marks the largest set of commercial agreements ever between the United States and Saudi Arabia across multiple sectors, including energy, infrastructure, health, and defense. Well, here's President Trump speaking at the US-Saudi Investment Forum in Riyadh.
And with this trip, we're adding over $1 trillion more in terms of investment into our country and buying our products. And, you know, nobody makes military equipment like us. We have the best military equipment, the best missiles, the best rockets, the best everything. Best submarines, by the way. Most lethal weapon in the world. See, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion of investment and jobs, and great companies are coming in. Never seen anything like it. There's no better place to make a future or make a fortune.
The US President speaking there in Riyadh. Well, let's listen now to what Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had to say about the deals.
The strength of economic relations between our two countries has been reflected in the growth of trade, which reached $500 billion during the period 2013 to 2024. Today, we hope for partnership opportunities worth $600 billion, including agreements worth more than $300 billion that were announced during this forum.
Well, let's bring Ali Raza into the conversation. Ali, you are the strategic advisor to the Saudi Arabia holding company. Great to have you with us here on the Riyal Deal as ever. We were just listening before we crossed to you to the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman outlining, these enormous deals that have been struck there in Riyadh, and President Trump before him. Just put all of this into context for us. I mean, when people talk about this visit and what was achieved as being historic, I mean, they're not exaggerating, are they?
Not at all, Tom. I mean, we're calling this a visit, but really this was a $600 billion geopolitical event, we could argue. And the flurry of announcements that we saw over the 24 to 48 hours, nothing short of incredible. Because they really, they touched on a number of key areas, $600 billion, over half of which was investments announced towards technology, AI, energy, and defense, with the bulk going to AI and defense. And the investments, the volume aside for a moment, they have very significant implications because not only was this a $600 billion geopolitical and investment event, it was also a very strategic partnership. So for one of the first times, 18,000 chips, NVIDIA chips, the top of the line NVIDIA chips have been authorized to be provided to Saudi Arabia, a state company. So it's one of the first times this has happened. This is a very unique instance, right? In addition to that, on the defense side, there is over $100 billion worth of arms that have been signed. Again, many of these agreements constituting technology, aircraft, they have not been allowed or permitted for anyone else to purchase. So there is a lot of significance to this event, not just because of the sheer volume of the capital that was involved or the investments that have been announced, but there is a very strategic partnership that's developed here. And I think it has consequences, obviously, for both nations and very positive ones, but also the world at large. Okay,
so you mentioned tech and defense as being perhaps the key sectors in which big deals were struck. I don't know if you've got anything more to say about that, but there were some other sectors as well, weren't they, as well as tech and defense?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, in tech and artificial intelligence, it's you look at just take a look at the footage of the people walking through and greeting in the ceremony. We had from the likes of the Qualcomm execs to Elon Musk to Jensen Huang. I mean, the extent of the deal making or the relationships that were developed here are quite broad and extensive. The new AI initiative called HUMAIN was just announced earlier this week, and on the back of this forum, we saw HUMAIN sign deals with Qualcomm, NVIDIA, with a number of enterprises to really activate that overall AI strategy. NVIDIA is underway on a $10 billion joint partnership with HUMAIN off the back of this. So definitely tech was very exciting. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, defense was in focus, but there's a bit of attention on energy as well. So Aramco is expected to be investing somewhat in the US. And there was a partnership that DataVault signed, which is a $20 billion partnership with Supermicro to build sustainable AI-driven data centers with a big focus on energy sustainability in the US as well. So it was quite far-reaching and it was very broad in its nature.
Okay. Obviously, a huge delegation of US CEOs. You mentioned some of them. I mean, the CEOs of Boeing, Amazon, OpenAI, Coca-Cola, Uber. I mean, it was more a case of who wasn't there, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's certainly one way to look at it. I think, this was really, I mean, if we step away from the investments and the programs for a moment, I believe this was extending an olive branch. So it was an expression of trust and relationship and a desire to work together, partner, trade together, and really share the best of both worlds. I think both sides came to the party wanting to create a real and lasting relationship. Absolutely. I mean, there were executives from a number of major US enterprises, but all of that can really be boiled down to the expression of trust and relationship. That's what this event was.
Right. And so, I mean, the tone that was struck there, I mean, and again, you mentioned it with the example of the NVIDIA chips. I mean, a considerable amount of trust invested by the United States in Saudi Arabia. I mean, do you think, trust and reciprocity, that sort of sums it up, doesn't it, in terms of the buzzwords and the tone in the discussions?
Most definitely. And, once again, if you've been following the engagement and the coverage of the event and the forum, you can see, I think at least you can see the body language of the leaders that are involved there, particularly His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Donald Trump. I mean, yes, there were a little bit of, there were some niceties exchanged and some gestures, but I felt, there's a very genuine expression of friendship there. And the keywords trust and reciprocity, yes, they're correct. That was the tonality throughout the whole event. And as I mentioned earlier, the granting of NVIDIA chips, this is a huge point of contention. I mean, this is something that's been in discussion for many years now. Not many regions in the world have had the privilege of securing such high caliber technology. And the reality is, I mean, at least in the current age, for the foreseeable future, NVIDIA is really the only one who is able to design or manufacture such technology. And given everything that's happening in the AI race, it's, the access to such technology, in my opinion, is the equivalent to the appetite for energy several decades ago. So semiconductors and AI, they are as important as energy was perhaps back in the 80s and 90s. It's the equivalent from a geopolitical and economic perspective. So this really is, I think, the greatest expression of trust and respect that could have been awarded here. And I mean, in addition to that, we also saw the lifting of sanctions on Syria, without getting into all of the details of everything that happened there. Trust and reciprocity were absolutely the frontline thematics. And the granting of this technology was just, I think, one expression of many.
Okay, and you touched on the exchanges between the US President Donald Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. I mean, I just wonder, just lastly, I mean, how significant you think the chemistry between those two men and the bond between those two men was in achieving all that was achieved there in Riyadh?
I truly believe there's a genuine respect and friendship there. And, as I said, the body language and the expressions that we've seen throughout that event, they are certainly an indicator of that, at least in my opinion. And, this kind of relationship cannot be developed, this kind of partnership cannot be developed without two equally willing parties sitting at a table and genuinely exchanging relevant intentions and appetite and working together for the betterment of each other. It's just not possible without that. And in this particular event, I think that was very clear. It was front and center. There's exchanges on both sides. There's a true willingness to create a partnership. There's been some very significant contributions from either side. So, without question, that relationship has a lot to do with it.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Ali Raza. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Well, as President Trump's visit to the region continues to send ripples right across the political spectrum and global markets as well, let's take a closer look at the actual beneficiaries of the agreements and the policies agreed to by the leaders of the United States and Saudi Arabia, notably the businesses and the entrepreneurs that run them. Well, one group that enables cross-border collaboration between firms in both countries is the US-Saudi Business Council. We're joined now by Charles Hallab, who is the CEO and the president of the US-Saudi Business Council. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Charles. You're in Riyadh, I see, and I'm told you were at the investment forum, which was held at the King Abdulaziz International Conference Center there in Riyadh earlier in the week. How would you describe the mood in that conference center?
Well, first, thank you so much. Great to be with you today. The mood is easy to describe. It was absolutely electric. I think no matter which side of the ocean you're on and which side of the political spectrum you're on, the mood was incredibly optimistic, energetic, and aspirational.
Okay, well, it certainly looked that way in the pictures. And we've been looking at some of the pictures just before we crossed to you. Now, just tell us a bit about the organization you work for, the US-Saudi Business Council. It's a bilateral NGO. Tell us, give some examples of the sorts of things the Council does to build and strengthen business ties between the two countries.
Sure, we work directly with companies on both sides, on the Saudi side, on the US side, to create partnerships, facilitate deals, do whatever we can to build and enhance trade, commerce, and investment between the two countries. In terms of this forum in particular, all sorts of deals were signed, celebrated. Many of those began with conversations at the US-Saudi Business Council. So a very exciting time for us and a very exciting week for us here.
Okay, and just tell us a bit about the Council's role during the course of the presidential visit.
Sure. Well, we worked with the Ministry of Investment of Saudi Arabia at the outset to help organize the forum. In particular, we were an authorized invitor, so we reached out to our networks and our members to make sure that the creme de la creme of U.S. companies and Saudi companies were represented at the forum. We were also honored to play a role at the forum itself. We hosted a panel session on quality of life sectors, which of course are very near and dear to our hearts, but also provide the magic around all these other business sectors and initiatives.
Okay, and presumably you had to do an awful lot of forward planning and arranging, and you and your colleagues at the Council were presumably extremely busy in the run-up to the arrival of President Trump.
Indeed, we were. Yes, I enjoyed my first full night of sleep in a long time last night. So,
okay, just tell us. I mean, the fact that the U.S. president made Saudi Arabia the first stop on this, his first planned foreign visit. It wasn't his actual first visit, but it was the first one he'd planned to make. What does that tell us about the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi?
Well, it certainly wasn't by accident. And the lessons are easy to draw from it, that Saudi Arabia is, it plays a very, very, very important role now under this presidency and is, in our view, rightfully center stage in the world for our purposes on the business front, but well beyond that as well.
So where does this then take U.S.-Saudi relations? I mean, where do we head to from here as a result of that visit and that historic forum? Well,
I think this is the beginning of a new chapter. We like to think of it as the chapter of true partnership. You know, the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia is very, very strong, has been strong. But that relationship, I think, in this next chapter becomes once again a true partnership, particularly on the business front. And as you know, all sorts of initiatives were launched, some renewed, and many objectives outlined that sort of clear the path for that sort of renewed partnership.
And when you say a true partnership, I mean, we heard a lot of people we spoke to as we were covering the visit by President Trump using words of, saying it was a two-way street, that investment forum, mutually beneficial to both countries. I mean, we know about the 600 billion Saudi investment commitment, but what's the upside for the kingdom? What's the upside for Saudi Arabia?
Well, I don't think it's just 600 billion, without any strategic purpose or intent around it. I think about Vision 2030. That's very, very important to the kingdom. I think a lot of that investment will be focused and managed through the lens of what serves the goals of Vision 2030 the best. And I do think that it's not simply return on investment in terms of those investments that are being contemplated. It's strategic return on investment. It's how those investments will build a stronger partnership between the United States and Saudi Arabia. So and keep in mind, it is indeed bilateral. There are all sorts of initiatives underway to make sure that partnerships are formed between U.S. companies and Saudi companies, that FDI from the United States continues to Saudi Arabia in light of and in the context of Vision 2030. So we view it very bilaterally, and that suits us very, very well at the U.S.-Saudi Business Council, because that is our mandate and our mission.
And when you say a strategic ROI, have you got an example of such a case?
Sure. All you need to do is look at the pillars that are most important under Vision 2030: technology and energy, renewable energy, mining and minerals, and understand that real estate, investing in real estate in California may not be the highest priority today, so much as investing in technologies and companies that have a real, tangible, and long-term benefit to the objectives of the kingdom and its various ministries and various initiatives in making sure that they reach their diversification goals and other goals.
Okay, and U.S. direct investments in Saudi Arabia reached just over 15 billion US dollars last year. How do you see the kingdom attracting more U.S. capital in the coming years then?
Well, this week was a very, very good start. I think U.S. companies want to feel comfortable about the overall relationship at the highest levels. That signal has certainly been sent out. I think there are other issues that the Saudis are addressing in terms of building the enthusiasm and the energy for U.S. investments into Saudi Arabia, and we're working with a number of stakeholders in that regard. So stay tuned, but this week and the forum and the visit and all the fanfare around it was just the beginning.
Yeah, indeed, and it's been a 90-year partnership, and people are talking about this new golden era in U.S.-Saudi relations. Where do you see the U.S.-Saudi partnership heading in the years ahead?
Well, I'm looking forward to the next 90, that's for sure. And I think golden years or golden age is an appropriate term. We're going to have to be very careful to not leave it just to fanfare, to make sure that commitments become investments, that words become actions. But I can tell you from working in the kingdom and around the kingdom for several decades, this time is different. There is incredible momentum, energy. There is specificity to deals and to projects and to initiatives. And we view ourselves as on point to make sure that all of this becomes the true partnership that we seem to be celebrating here today.
Yeah, and obviously your role, as you've been describing it, is to facilitate business in both directions. We've been talking to a lot of people on this channel the last few days about how to do business in Saudi Arabia, and we've heard from Saudi economists and experts telling us there are certain things you shouldn't do, and then there's a sense in Saudi Arabia people are fed up with people viewing Saudi Arabia as being a kind of an ATM machine. They don't like being patronized or preached to. I mean, have you got any golden nuggets of advice that you give your clients, your partners, when they want to enter the Saudi market?
Yeah, not unlike what you just described. Those days are long gone, if they ever existed in the first place, where people could come here and just expect the kingdom or any of its stakeholders to pony up money for this investment or that investment. It all has to have a story related to it, and a story that is in furtherance of the objectives of Vision 2030. And you don't need me to talk about those at length, probably, but they're very clear and very ambitious. And those are the kinds of decisions that will be made with respect to Saudi investments going forward. And you're absolutely singing our tune when you say this is not a time to come and simply view Saudi Arabia as a cash machine. Saudi Arabia enjoys incredible prominence on the world stage these days. And for the United States and for U.S. businesses, they deserve the respect and recognition as a strategic partner.
Just going back to the deals that were struck during President Trump's visit to Saudi. I mean, obviously lots of sectors affected. Yeah. The obvious ones being energy, defense, tech, space to a certain extent as well. Which sector do you think holds the greatest long-term potential for collaboration, do you think?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble. This is like asking about children. I love them all equally, Tom. Greatest long-term I really probably technology if I had to pick one, but there are others that are very near and dear to my heart. The session we did was on quality of life sectors, for example, and I think that's where some of the magic resides in tourism and culture and sports and entertainment. That creates the magic that, in my view, enables great initiatives in energy and technology and other areas.
Right, and there's an argument, isn't there, that they all feed each other, and there's, once you've got an ecosystem going, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Picking up on tech there, I mean, obviously artificial intelligence very close to the hearts of a lot of people around the world, but it seems like Saudi Arabia is really keen on developing AI. Obviously, yes. US chips are going to be used there in Saudi Arabia, and that involves a lot of trust, doesn't it? Because the United States doesn't give that kind of trust away very easily.
Well said, yes. In this particular area with respect to chips and in other areas, you can see the flavor of the week, and even behind the scenes, there's trust on show.
Just two quick questions before we wrap up. I'd like to take you back to the forum and the mood there. And I just wanted to ask you, yeah. What do you think stands out for you from there, or maybe another element of President Trump's visit as being the photo moment of the whole time that he was there?
Well, the photo moment is the moment with MBS, or the moments with MBS. And Trump together. Those symbolize the new chapter, the friendship, the partnership, and so on and so forth. But what was different about this, and I've been to many of these forums, as I'm sure you have, the electricity was genuine. The skepticism was not there. I mean, skeptics were converted over the course of the last few weeks, and that was really interesting and eye-opening for me.
And what was the loudest moment in that forum? I mean, we had a glimpse of, obviously clips and footage of the forum taking place in Riyadh, but, in terms of the audio, what was the moment where people gasped or clapped the loudest?
Maybe hard to say, but my sense was the announcement about Syria was figuratively and literally the loudest moment in the room.
Yeah, that tallies with what we were told. Well, thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Charles Hallab, the CEO and the President of the US Saudi Business Council. Thank you for your time, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
What we're going to say with our top story, the presidential visit to Saudi Arabia. We're joined now by Naif Alghaith, who is the Chief Economist at Riyad Bank. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on the Riyal Deal. We're also joined by Ali Raza, the Strategic Advisor to the Saudi Arabia Holding Company, who's with us every week. Thanks to you as well, Ali. I just really want to talk to you both about the impact and the fallout of a visit like this by President Donald Trump, all those deals that were struck, that large delegation of sort of an A to Z of CEOs of all the big companies anyone's ever heard of in the United States. I mean, let me start by asking you, Naif, I mean, what is the impact of those kind of announcements, that kind of a visit on the Saudi economy, do you think?
Well, thank you very much, Tom, for having me. Definitely, this visit is very important, and we saw so many key people, including Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Jensen Han. These are the top individuals in the world, and we saw so many deals coming. If anything, this signals the important relationship between the Saudi Arabia and the US, and also signal the importance of the Saudi economy. And this gives also a confidence to investors to Saudi Arabia as a great place to invest and sustain their investment.
And Ali, I mean, just picking up on what Naif was just saying there, I mean, there's a lot of symbolism, isn't there, having those sorts of people in those sorts of numbers all descend on one country at the same time?
Most definitely. I'll pick up on a keyword Naif used, confidence. And the confidence, I believe, is international, but it's also local. You know, the presence of such industrial champions in any economy is a huge signal to the international investors, but also to the local economy. Platforms like this, you know, NVIDIA is joining hands with HUMAIN to build infrastructure in region. Platforms like this have a cyclical effect. You have enterprises that are created. You have the people that work in these enterprises. There is capital that circulates through the economy that's then passed on to other future entrepreneurs. And so the cycle goes. So the confidence, I think, is a very important aspect of this. It's a big thematic takeaway from this, but I think it's also important in this kind of conversation to acknowledge it's international, but it's also local. It's a win-win for all.
Naif, I mean, in terms of takeaways, in terms of the numbers and looking at the deals, what for you are the biggest takeaways of those eventful 24 hours that President Trump was on Saudi territory?
There are so many to compare, to be honest, and then probably that stand out from just the name. If you see Elon Musk and Sam and Jensen, these are more into future tech plus AI. So we have seen so many AI investment. We saw the creation of the HUMAIN, and a few days later, deals done with NVIDIA, AMD. These are very significant deals to put Saudi Arabia in the map of AI. And just probably to recall some, I'll bring some numbers. Saudi Arabia, the digital is emphasizes of the importance of the digital economy. The contribution of digital economy in Saudi Arabia right now exceed the 10%. AI is also important right now as part of the government and the governance as well. In terms of the e-government, Saudi Arabia ranks the 6th in the world and the target to be in the 5th in the world. So all of these deals fall into the direction of the vision of 2030 and they make progress possible to reach the vision.
And do you think, now, if we're likely to see more US firms entering the Saudi market on the back of that visit? I mean, does it pave the way for more US interest, more US firms to want to set up in Saudi Arabia, do you think?
Definitely. We saw right now so many big companies, Google, Delta Vault, and etc. They are will be investing both countries in Saudi and in the US above 80 billion. This means these companies are able to make money, and this signals that you could make money. In fact, the non-oil GDP right now is 4% and or above 4%. That means you could get more than 4% in your investment. And that is by itself is signaling how good this infrastructure for investment to be and to attract that many of a large lump sum in this country.
And Ali, I mean, we were talking about, confidence, that being a key buzzword that we picked up on just a few minutes ago. I mean, a big impact on investor confidence from a visit like this. Do you see a lot more foreign companies wanting to enter the Saudi market, as Naif was just saying there?
Without question, the last couple of years, we've seen a complete change in attitude across the globe towards what Saudi Arabia means as an investment destination. A couple of years ago, we would see many of the larger private equity outfits or fund managers and investment outfits that would, in often cases, play a fly-in, fly-out role or have sort of local marketing offices. I think this is a good, there's a good indication in this sector that that attitude is changing. KKR recently appointed a new chairman of the Middle East and committed to putting an investment team in place here. We're seeing a lot more of the private equity outfits very seriously considering deploying in region rather than just raising in region. We're seeing a lot of the enterprises on the back of visits like the one that just took place, expressing interest to be in region. So, and there's once again, I mean, building on the idea of confidence. Yes, I think there's I mean, without question, there's an increase in confidence, but now there's also an understanding of what can be achieved here. So once again, to Naif's point, people are recognizing across the globe the size of the opportunity here, the commercial opportunity that's available, and I think that's getting crystallized in all of the inflows now.
Naif, let's just talk about the performance of the Saudi economy. In Q1, GDP growth was around 2.7%, I believe. I'm just wondering what you think is driving this growth. Where are we seeing the strongest areas of performance, given that we are in this context, aren't we, of lower oil prices?
Exactly, Tom. We witness right now low oil prices, and yet we still have a positive GDP growth. What Saudi Arabia has been concentrating by now is in the non-oil GDP. It has been growing more than 4% in the past 2 or 3 years, with the exception of the COVID year. So if you go back in 2016, the contribution of the non-oil economy is less than 45%. Right now, and by the end of 2024, is more than 54%. And this is not a small number. This is a huge, especially that Saudi Arabia relies heavily in oil, and to shift that from relying heavily in the oil to rely more in the non-oil economy. We saw that PMI numbers are now exceeding 60 in the first quarter of this year. We project non-oil GDP to continue growth in 2025, 2026 to exceed the 4%, 4.5%. Which sectors probably leading this growth? There are many. We saw the digital economy, which we just touched upon. It's contributing 12%. There are some sectors that usually they haven't been contributing much, and now we are seeing they're picking up. Manufacturing is right now is one of the top contributors to Saudi Arabia, and this also in line with the Vision 2030 to have more factories. Right now we have so many factories with the Chinese, Americans, and also to reach to the automobile industry. So many sectors contributing, as tourism that hasn't never been a positive, even in the balance of payment. Right now, we have seen it positive and contributing to the GDP. So all these come together to make the growth and the GDP positive and continue its trajectory.
Yeah, and actually we've talked about tourism quite a bit on this program. Ali and I have had this conversation in the context of airlines and other infrastructure aimed at attracting tourists. And I'm just wondering, Naif, as well, I mean, in terms of attracting jobs, I mean, obviously tourism is one area that's going to see an increase in jobs. The employment situation looking pretty good as well. I mean, we talked a couple of weeks ago about the update on Vision 2030, and it seems the unemployment situation is better than it's been for quite a long time. I mean, why do you think that is?
So right now we are sitting at 7%, which was the Vision 2030 target. And right now, once we reach 7%, the target has been updated to 5%. The lump sum of contribution of this unemployment, it was fed through the private sector. So this is very, it signals also that the importance of the diversification, it's an implication on the unemployment. All these deals also we have seen, they will open up new opportunities. We need to remind ourselves it's quite challenging for a young nation to sustain and decrease the unemployment, because every day we have new comers to the labor force. So the new graduates, they look for opportunities in the market, in the labor market, and they find these opportunities, and you need to increase the opportunities more than the number of the new graduates to reduce the unemployment. So it has been challenging, but with these initiatives and opportunities, the number has been got to the target, and now we have a new challenge to reach into a new target.
Ali, just to bring you back into the conversation, in terms of one of the things we've noticed, and I think we've talked about this before as well, you and I, is how small and medium-sized enterprises are also quite a big part, aren't they, of the growth in jobs. I mean, are they affected, do you think, by all of those big deals as well that we were talking about that happened during the presidential visit?
Well, once again, Tom, these kinds of platforms, investments, initiatives, they have a cyclical effect, right? And with all of the economic development underway, all the different industries and sectors being developed, as Naif just said, there's a very large pipeline of factories being built. Yes, of course, there are new opportunities. SMEs and the SME attitude is changing. People want to start businesses. They want to do more. There's opportunity to do more. And the creation of these platforms, the introduction of these investments, they create opportunity and they create capability and they bring knowledge and IP to the region. So, of course, capital aside, all of these elements have a cyclical effect throughout the economy, and we're seeing that reflected in the numbers and the activity on the ground.
Okay, just turning to Naif to sort of wrap up. I mean, the overall health of the Saudi economy, and we've talked about a couple of indicators. Unemployment is under control, inflation under control, GDP growth, we've been saying 2.7% in Q1. I mean, overall, things look pretty good, don't they? Any other key indicators you think we should be keeping an eye on?
Perfect. Most of all the indicators you have mentioned are excellent. We also watched for the PMI. Right now, also the optimistic of investors are quite high, and we see it in the expansion territory. Right now, we have talked about the non-oil economy, but right now also there is a large segment of the oil economy. With the recent adjustment of the tariffs, there is expectation. We have seen the few days before that Brent prices picked up slightly, so there might be also an increase in the oil economy.
Okay, thanks, Naif. And Ali, your final thoughts on the overall health of the Saudi economy and the key indicators we've been talking about?
Well, I think the most important thing to acknowledge here is that if the Vision 2030 progress report is an indication, the leading indicators are all in the green. They're showing positive momentum. Oil prices have been down recently, but oil prices go up and down. It's not the first time we've seen this movie. This is one of the reasons the Vision 2030 initiative is underway. It's to insulate the economy and diversify it away from reliance on any one source of income, and to create prosperity that transcends fluctuations from just the price of one single resource. So all in all, the leading indicators are in the green, they're positive, and I think the economy is on a positive track forward.
All right, well, thanks for that, Ali Raza, and thank you as well to our guest today, Naif Alghaith, Chief Economist at Riyad Bank. Thank you both very much indeed. Well, let's take a quick look at some of the other business news stories making the headlines. The Saudi mega project NEOM names Ayman Al-Mudaifer as its new CEO. That's according to an announcement by the PIF. Well, Mudaifer has been NEOM's acting CEO since November, when he succeeded Nathabi Al-Nasser. Well, the new chief will be responsible for taking over the development of the ambitious project. The Saudi energy giant Aramco has signed agreements worth $90 billion with American companies. Well, coinciding with President Trump's visit, Aramco signed 34 MOUs to cover sectors including LNG, chemicals, and AI. Well, Amazon, Nvidia, and Exxon are amongst the US firms that entered into an agreement with Saudi Aramco. The interim CEO of Lucid Group, Mark Winterhoff, suggests levying tariffs on foreign cars to boost domestic manufacturing. Well, the interim CEO of the Saudi PIF-backed automaker says that the lack of tariffs may run the risk of, quote, killing the industry in its infancy. Winterhoff called for more support for local players in the saturated auto market. And the US chipmaker NVIDIA has agreed to ship 18,000 chips to Saudi Arabia to help power a new data center project. Well, cutting-edge Blackwell chips, which is amongst the most advanced NVIDIA chips, will be used in a 500-megawatt data center in the kingdom. That's according to remarks at the Saudi-US Investment Forum in Riyadh. Well, staying with artificial intelligence, and at the center of this initiative between NVIDIA and the PIF is HUMAIN. That is a global AI powerhouse recently launched by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And it's not just NVIDIA that's working towards this Saudi initiative. AMD, another leading American chip designer, is also set to partner with HUMAIN as part of a $10 billion collaboration. Well, the CEOs of both tech giants were in Riyadh with President Trump. Here's what the CEO of NVIDIA had to say.
As you know, artificial intelligence has been a revolutionary technology, the most transformative technology of our time, maybe of any time. And you've heard plenty about the capabilities of artificial intelligence. You've also heard how AI is going to transform every single industry, meaning that it's going to be the infrastructure of every single industry. And HUMAIN is going to be building the AI infrastructure here in Saudi Arabia. AI is also in itself an industry. It is a manufacturing industry. It's a manufacturing industry that requires energy. And as you know, Saudi Arabia is rich with energy. Transforming the energy through this giant versions of these NVIDIA AI supercomputers, which are essentially AI factories.
Okay, the CEO of NVIDIA speaking there. Well, Saudi Arabia has been working to develop its artificial intelligence capacity and strengthen its cloud computing infrastructure, pouring millions of dollars into the effort. Let's bring Ali Raza, strategic advisor to the Saudi Arabia holding company, back into the conversation. I mean, Ali, as we just heard there from Jensen Huang, AI is transforming every single industry. I mean, that goes a long way, doesn't it, towards explaining why it should be such a key focus of Saudi investment?
Most definitely. AI itself is an industry, but AI is also the infrastructure to industry, as Mr. Jensen Huang just shared. This is the equivalent of, we could akin this to the internet. The internet or telecommunications itself is an industry, but it's also the infrastructure to all industry. So, in the push towards diversification away from oil and, only the energy as a source of income, and also to pursue economic and industrial prosperity, of course, Saudi Arabia is interested in investing in what many believe will become the fabric of society, much like the internet and telecommunications have. So HUMAIN has been, one of the most exciting, I think, developments towards this effort. Last year, we heard about Hallab, which is the advanced manufacturing and semiconductor investment arm of the PIF. Similarly, HUMAIN has been established as what we expect will become a platform and a national champion for AI. And once again, it makes absolute sense that the nation, in its push towards economic prosperity, diversification, and transformation, they would invest in the technology that is at the forefront of all industry and society right now.
The other part of Mr. Huang's clip we just listened to there was, the emphasis he put on the fact that Saudi Arabia has an abundance of energy. That makes it another obvious direction for Saudi Arabia to go in.
Most definitely. So energy, of course, is the access or availability of energy is the question on everyone's mind when it comes to building all of this cloud infrastructure across the world. I'm having this conversation on a daily basis with individuals from the industry that seem to have this on their mind. Yes, Saudi Arabia has an abundance of energy, but I think it's important also to note here, Saudi Arabia has an abundance of energy and has a huge push towards renewable energy. Saudi Arabia has a net zero target in a few decades. And the key with the cloud infrastructure that's being developed in the region is that there is, irrespective of the traditional sources of energy, there's a push towards sustainable cloud infrastructure development. DataVault earlier this year announced a data center at NEOM, a 5 gigawatt data center, which is going to be a net zero, fully sustainable data center. So, this is a very common thematic as well. Yeah, absolutely, there's an abundance of energy. But I think the exciting thing here also is the fact that there is a real consideration for sustainable cloud infrastructure development on top of all.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Ali Raza, Strategic Advisor to the Saudi Arabia Holding Company. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, that is all we have time for on today's edition of The Riyal Deal here on Al Arabiya English. Thank you very much indeed for watching. See you again next week.